China to issue 1 trillion yuan of special bonds to save economy, netizens say can only sigh. Immigration surged 500 million times a day. China deletes this hot surge term. How changing economic landscape affecting rich Chinese. U.S. military report, China is accelerating expansion of nuclear arsenal. It's all covered in today's China Truths. China to issue 1 trillion yuan of special bonds to save economy, netizens say can only sigh. China has decided to issue special treasury bonds worth 1 trillion yuan, equivalent to $137 billion, to support struggling local governments, but it has aroused speculation that the era of anchorless money printing has begun. China Daily, a state media, reported on Tuesday, October 24, that the Chinese government plans to issue the bonds during the fourth quarter of this year. According to China's finance ministry, all of the funds raised through the special bonds will be allocated to local governments. About half trillion yuan will be used within 2023, and the remaining 500 billion yuan will be utilized next year. The finance ministry said it will conduct the bond issuance soon and ensure the smooth allocation as well as strengthen regulations so that the funds will be used as planned. However, state media made it clear that most of the funds will focus on reconstruction of areas hit hard by natural disasters, flood prevention, management projects, and natural disaster emergency response capacity improvement projects. On October 24, the Standing Committee of China's National People's Congress, the country's top legislature, approved the additional issuance of treasury bonds and the adjustment of the central budget in 2023. Following the issuance, China's national fiscal deficit will increase from 3.88 trillion yuan to 4.88 trillion yuan, and the fiscal deficit rates is expected to increase from 3% to about 3.8%. Meanwhile, at the beginning of this year, the Chinese government officially set a red line at 3%. Some experts pointed out that the Chinese authorities' release of massive money may be to fill the big hole in the finances of local governments, which are struggling after their huge spending on battling the COVID pandemic and due to the declining real estate market. Over the past few decades, the Chinese government has set 3% as the warning line for the deficit rate. In recent years, although as the fiscal pressure on the authorities has increased, domestic discussions have begun on whether to break through the warning line. However, former Premier Li Keqiang had been working hard to control the deficit rate within 3%. At the National People's Congress in March this year, Li Keqiang read out the previous government's work report during his term, in which they still set the government budget deficit rate for the new year at 3%. The current authorities have significantly increased the deficit rate to 3.8%, which is equivalent to breaking the red line that has been maintained for decades. This move highlights the unprecedented severity of China's fiscal woes. In 2008, during the peak of the world's financial crisis, China also invested 4 trillion yuan in infrastructure development to save the economy. But China now has a surplus of infrastructure, and many projects are suffering losses. Many financial professionals believe that if China continues to invest in infrastructure to stimulate the economy, it will have little effect. In addition, many Twitter users believe that today's Chinese local governments are heavily in debt and even normal operations are problematic. Though Chinese authorities said it will issue 1 trillion yuan of treasury bonds this time to solve people's livelihood problems, netizens believe that it would use the funds to repay debts or pay wages to local governments. One netizen questioned, disaster relief bonds? Who buys them? Share it among the banks? The progress is going a bit fast. Another commented, it's just to help the local governments pay off old debts. Someone else said, with hundreds of trillions of debts from local governments, not to mention the principal, how big is the interest? Is this enough money? One netizen made a calculation, basically all civil servants are paid. The civil servants who rely on the government to make a living plus various temporary workers, approximately 10% of the population equals 140 million people. The average monthly salary is 3,000 yuan, and monthly salary expenditure equals 420 billion yuan. The local governments estimate that through fines, taxes, and crackdowns on local tyrants, it will solve half of it, or about 200 billion yuan per month. 1 trillion yuan is barely enough to pay half a year's salary. I have encountered this kind of dilemma in business. The key is to increase revenue and reduce expenditure. To increase revenue is not to fight local tyrants, but to develop the economy. With the current situation, I can only sigh. China's local government debts are estimated at as high as 94 trillion yuan. Many provinces and cities are in bankruptcy and have publicly asked the central government for help. In a meeting on July 24, 2023, China's Politburo proposed to formulate a so-called debt package plan. On August 21, Sigh reported that the Chinese authorities' special financing bond plan of about 1.5 trillion yuan has been launched. In September, Inner Mongolia took the lead by issuing 66.3 billion yuan of special refinancing bonds. After that, many provinces and cities successively issued special refinancing bonds. At that time, Chinese media reported that the restart of special refinancing bonds also meant that more so-called debt consolidation tools from the authorities were expected to be implemented. China's latest bond issuance plan is seen as an unusual step to boost its sluggish economic growth. In a statement, Société Générale Cross-Asset Research said that the bond issuance plan is one of China's most significant incremental moves so far, but this is not the bazooka. It wrote, "The central government is recognizing that greater help is needed to sustain the nascent recovery momentum, and this task is too much a burden on local governments alone." Larry Hu, chief China economist at Macquarie, said in a statement that it's still a modest positive surprise, as it's not anticipated by the market. The economist added, "The sheer amount of 1 trillion is not that significant, certainly not a game changer." China's economy expanded 4.9% in the third quarter of this year, below the government's target, and Chinese officials have continued to face calls for more stimulus. Immigration surged 500 million times a day. China deletes this hot search term. Immigration has become a hot search term among Chinese netizens. On October 18, another wave of searches for immigration erupted on mainland China's WeChat platform. Countless articles and videos were related to immigration, causing the search volume for the keyword immigration to surge by 1,156%, reaching an astonishing number of 510 million. But a few days later, on October 22, the keyword immigration was directly deleted from the WeChat index and displayed as 0. If you search for the keyword immigration in the WeChat index, it will show that this word is not included yet. Netizens said that the authorities are the best example of the idiom hiding their ears and stealing their bells. The WeChat index refers to the change in the popularity of a certain keyword in Chinese social platform WeChat based on WeChat big data. The big data comes from a comprehensive analysis of WeChat searches, public account articles, and publicly forwarded articles in the network. In other words, the higher the keyword is, the more popular it is in the WeChat index. However, social media platforms in mainland China are all under the control of the Chinese authorities, who can artificially control the popularity. Since the communist government implemented strict COVID control measures, many people have begun to search for immigration, and the keyword's popularity on WeChat has increased rapidly, quickly breaking through the mark of 100 million searches. After the white paper revolution at the end of 2022, immigration became a hot search term on local internet networks again, with the number of searches reaching 116 million times, catching up with the search volume when the COVID pandemic spread significantly in March and June 2022. Some netizens commented that the Chinese Communist Party officials launch political movements every once in a while, and everyone is afraid of it. One said, "Friends around me are looking for a way to immigrate for the next generation." China's current economic downturn has caused widespread public dissatisfaction. Rich Chinese are trying their best to escape from mainland China through underground banks, white-collar workers through skilled immigrants, and grassroots through trafficking. Political commentator Li Lini said that the large number of Chinese people searching for the keyword immigration directly slaps the government in the face. It means that China under the Chinese Communist Party is not as beautiful as they boast. This is a powerful expose of the Chinese Communist Party's lies. Li Lini added that, although the Chinese authorities can delete and block some keywords for a period of time, in the medium to long term, it will only cause greater public dissatisfaction and allow more Chinese people to see the true nature of the Chinese Communist Party and voluntarily abandon it. How changing economic landscape affecting rich Chinese. A weakening economy, property uncertainties, and changing e-commerce landscape are impacting Chinese wealth creation, according to Yuan China Rich List, which revealed that while some benefited, the nation's economic woes, and the property sector's downfall, in particular, have dealt a blow to many on the list of rich Chinese. According to the Yuan China Rich List 2023 released on Tuesday, with 1,241 people owning more than 5 billion yuan equal to $690 million, down 5%, or 64 Chinese individuals from the previous year, and down 15%, or 224 people from the high 2 years earlier. Total wealth dropped 4% to $3.2 trillion, but 522 individuals saw their wealth increase, of which 115 were new faces. 898 saw their wealth decrease or remain unchanged, of which 179 dropped off the list. Bottled water king Zhongshanshan, 69, topped the Yuan China Rich List for the third straight year with $62 billion. Despite the economic headwinds, Zhong's wealth has remained almost unchanged. The number of wealthy individuals in the Yuan China Rich List 2 declined 2 years in a row for the second time since records began 25 years ago, the previous being in 2018 and 2019. As real estate developers with high debt continued to lose value, almost 500 individuals dropped off the list in these 2 years. Former number 1 Wang Jianlin of the property developer Wanda Group was down by $7.3 billion. Another former number 1, Su Jiayin of Evergrande, still featured on the list, but that was primarily due to the dividends the company paid in previous years, even though Evergrande went into bankruptcy since then and Mr. Su has been under detention by the authorities since September. The list said real estate was the hardest hit industry for the second year running, as developers with high debt loads continued to see liquidity crunches. 179 dropped off this year, led by industrial products accounting for 14%, followed by real estate, accounting for 15%. Other industries hit this year include renewables, especially solar and batteries, and pharmaceuticals as China's healthcare reforms deepened. Changing in e-commerce. Nevertheless, the slowing economy and strict COVID restrictions during 2022 in China helped a few to swell their wealth as more shoppers turned to discount e-commerce platforms like Temu and Pinduoduo. Colin Huang, founder of PDD Holding, for instance, saw his wealth go up by $13.8 billion, 59%, which reflects how e-commerce is changing in China, where customer confidence is still low after 3 years of COVID restrictions, and in other countries, where shopping sites like Temu and Shein thrive. Temu is an online marketplace owned by PDD Holdings, which also operates Pinduoduo, a major online commerce site in China that offers significantly discounted products generally supplied directly from China to consumers. Mr. Huang's rising fortunes is significant given that in April 2019, the U.S. Trade Representative's Office, USTR, placed Pinduoduo, which it describes as the third largest in terms of user numbers, on its blacklist of commercial platforms that failed to prevent the sale of counterfeit products. According to a report by Chinese news portal Sina, however, Pinduoduo argued that its model is akin to the U.S. company Wish.com, and its consumers are poor Chinese farmers. China e-commerce czar Jack Ma, founder of rival Alibaba, which is currently going through a restructuring and working to fend off competition from the likes of PDD, fell 1 place from 2022 to the 10th spot, and the number of Alibaba shareholders on the list fell from 18 last year to 12 this year. Ant, Alibaba, and Jack Ma have been placed under regulatory scrutiny over the past 2 years. The USTR also kept Alibaba Group's Taobao.com, China's largest e-commerce platform, on the list. According to Huruan's list, Richard Liu, the founder of e-commerce giant JD.com, also saw his and his wife Zhang Zetian's wealth plummet by $6.2 billion since last year to $8.26 billion. JD.com's stock hit a new low earlier this month as banks lowered their price expectations, citing a slower-than-expected recovery in consumer spending. U.S. military report: China is accelerating expansion of nuclear arsenal. The U.S. Department of Defense has recently released the China Military Power Report, CMPR, warning that the communist government is accelerating the expansion of its nuclear arsenal and increasing diplomatic, political, and military pressure on Taiwan. The report, titled Military and Security Developments Involving the People's Republic of China, released on October 19, revealed that, as of May, China is estimated to have more than 500 nuclear warheads. That number is higher than the more than 400 nuclear warheads estimated in 2021 and also exceeds previous expectations. The Pentagon estimates in the report that, by 2030, China may have more than 1,000 nuclear warheads. The report also mentioned that the People's Liberation Army, PLA, may be exploring development of conventionally armed intercontinental range missile systems. And if developed and fielded, such capabilities would allow China to threaten conventional strikes against targets in the continental United States, Hawaii, and Alaska. Mr. Mark, host of the military channel Mark Time and Space, said, China's accelerated development of nuclear weapons is an established strategy of Xi Jinping, mainly because Xi Jinping wants to compete with the United States for hegemony. Nuclear weapons are actually difficult to use in war, but work as a deterrent force. They can continue to be developed. Judging from China's current level, the scale of nuclear weapons is far smaller than that of the United States and the former Soviet Union. According to the report, China has numerically the largest navy in the world, with an overall battle force of over 370 ships and submarines, including more than 140 major surface combatants. They are modern multi-mission ships and submarines. In comparison, the Chinese Navy had 340 ships last year. Mr. Su Ziyun, director of the Institute of Defense Strategy and Resources of the Taiwan National Defense Academy, said, since the Trump era, we have noticed that China is developing a new generation of nuclear weapons. The first is, of course, to increase its political denial capabilities. The second is to change the international situation and political structure. Although the international community talks about political structure, this political structure implies economic power, military power, and nuclear power. If China's nuclear weapons increase to 1,500, it will have an external expansion effect, that is, it will become another tool of coercion. However, Mark pointed out that China has natural flaws in the information communication of the entire battlefield management. He said, if the Chinese Communist Party is under the premise that the Communist Party commands everything, it will be difficult to change its rigid combat and command system. Although it wants to learn from the West, including technology, etc., its entire combat ideas and command ideas are completely different from those in the West. If it does not give up the leadership of the Communist Party, it cannot change this aspect. While China is accelerating the expansion of its military power, it is also constantly strengthening its external military coercion and risky operational behavior. Between 2021 and 2023, the United States documented more than 180 incidents of China's dangerous air interceptions against U.S. military aircraft by Chinese military aircraft in the Indo-Pacific region, more in the past 2 years than in the previous decade. Over the same period, the PLA has conducted around 100 instances of coercive and risky operational behavior against U.S. allies and partners, in an effort to deter both the United States and others from conducting lawful operations in the region. Mark said, the territorial waters claimed by China are not recognized internationally, and when China insists on its territorial waters, it will have more conflicts with neighboring countries. At this time, China uses nuclear weapons, including nuclear missiles or nuclear bombers, to put pressure on the other sides. This possibility is the same as during the Cold War. The U.S. Department of Defense report specifically mentioned that the Chinese government is increasing its diplomatic, political, and military pressure on Taiwan. The report pointed out that the Chinese army has increased provocations and destabilizing actions in the Taiwan Strait and surrounding areas, including ballistic missiles flying over the Taiwan Strait, a significant increase in flights entering the Taiwan Air Defense Identification Zone, and a series of major military exercises near Taiwan. Mr. Sigh said, because first, China's military expenditure has quadrupled in recent years. Second, more importantly, China's military power is expansionist and it adopts bullying actions. It is systemic expansionism. The Pentagon report, quoting data from China's Ministry of National Defense, pointed out that China dispatched 1,737 military aircraft into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone (ADIZ) in 2022, a significant increase of 79% from 972 incursions in 2021. The report reminded that the Chinese Communist Army may also carry out a joint blockade campaign, in which it would employ blockades of maritime and air traffic, including a cutoff of Taiwan's vital imports, to force Taiwan to surrender. Mr. Sigh said that with this point, China will turn the world into a new type of bipolar world. Because in the past, the bipolar world was the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, it may now become the two camps of the United States and China and the Soviet Union. Then, of course, the world will become a new situation of mutual deterrence. In addition, the U.S. military report warned that the so-called anti-access strategy of China is an attempt to limit the U.S. military power in the East China Sea and South China Sea, and to restrict the U.S. military's access to the Indo-Pacific region. While preventing U.S. military intervention, China is also strengthening its military capabilities in the Pacific and other regions. In the China Military Power Report, the U.S. Department of Defense said that China's foreign policy seeks to build a community of common destiny that supports its strategy to realize the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. China's ambition to reshape the international order derives from the objectives of its national strategy and the Chinese Communist Party's political and governing systems. Don't forget to comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. If you find the information helpful, please share this video with a friend to watch together. This will be a great source of motivation for our team to produce more and more quality and reliable videos. And also don't forget to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths. Thank you for tuning in.